The group of people that leave church that I like to talk about the most is rarely talked about in these discussions, or at least described the way I describe them. And I'm talking about Christians who leave Christian communities for Christian reasons. And I'm one of them. Hey, I'm Damon Garcia, and I'm a Christian leftist who likes to talk about spirituality and culture and give you resources for the future of faith. But I grew up in evangelicalism and became a minister, and a couple years ago, when I was in the middle of this pastoral licensing process, I walked away from my youth and young adults ministry position. I walked away from the local church I was a part of, walked away from the denomination, and walked away from all evangelicalism, all on the same day, which is a little bit unique to my story. I know many people kind of just fade out, but it's a really interesting story that so many of us share that I want to talk about. It seems like what happens is the church gives you these tools for spiritual growth, and then one day you realize there is a ceiling to that growth. You take a look at the modern world and think about how Jesus would respond to it, and for so many people that question leads them to beliefs and positions that are considered heretical in so many evangelical and Christian communities. For example, you look at your gay and transgender friends and think about what you know about Jesus from the Bible and from your pastor's sermons, and you decide to love and accept them. You look at people of other faiths and you think about how the first Christians were constantly evolving, how expansive their respect for other cultural traditions were, and you decide to affirm people of other faiths. You look at science and you realize this spirit of continual learning and discovering spiritual things also joyously flourishes when you're learning about physical things and how the universe physically came to be. And then you take a look back at how Christianity is being taught in this Christian community that started your spiritual journey, and you feel like you've completely outgrown it. And then maybe you decide to stick around anyway because of all the relationships you've built there. But then you start to notice a pattern. And in that pattern, a particular event happens and you have a certain response to this event. And then you go to church and hear that their response to it is the exact opposite, and sometimes even quite gross. And that happens over and over until you feel even more and more alienated. And then you start to realize that you feel a whole lot better around people outside the church who have views and positions and beliefs that seem to be a lot more rational and even more compassionate at times. And then every Sunday morning it becomes harder and harder to get out of bed and make your way all the way to this Christian community that you used to love so much, until eventually you decide to sleep in a couple Sundays and you start to realize you feel a lot better throughout the week when you skip church, because you're not experiencing this day out of the week where you end up leaving feeling very stressed and very lonely. And then eventually, you just stop going altogether. And so many people within the church see this moment as a moment of weakness without realizing how many Sundays they stayed strong through, even though they desperately wanted to get out for a long time before they finally did. And then you run into old church friends around town, and they say things like, "Where have you been? Where do you go to church now? You should check out my church that I've been going to lately. It's totally different." Even though you know the problems you had with your old church are present in all these evangelical churches that people are trying to get you to go to, who are all evangelical because they read the Bible literally, they're against gay and trans people, they believe a bunch of people go to hell, etc. And this is a very painful experience that requires so much grief and recovery and something to move forward toward. And that's why I'm so passionate about talking about this subject and helping other people who have left communities in this way. And one of the things I try to do on this channel is talk about how actually expansive this Christian tradition is, and how there's all kinds of room for growth and for all these beliefs that people told you were terrible and wrong. But that's not what this video is about. If I'm describing you when I talk about this very, very common story, or someone you know, I just want you to know this. This has happened before. Plenty of times within church history. One of the recent times I can think of is during the abolition era, when all these churches were actually preaching for slavery. And then after that, they were preaching for segregation. And you had all these people who, in their spiritual journey of trying to be more like Jesus, trying to be more Christian, felt like they couldn't stay within the Christian community and had to leave. In fact, during the abolition era, all these people who left for that reason actually were called come-outers. Like in the newspaper, you'd be like, so-and-so was a come-outer. And it inspires me because it shows that this kind of thing happens. And we see that usually when a large group of people leave the church because they feel like it could be better, what ends up happening in the future is that the future church actually agrees way more with this group that left than the original tradition. It happens over and over and over throughout church history. We're just in the middle of it, so it's very confusing and overwhelming, and it feels like we're kind of groping in the dark during this very massive shift, and not only Christianity, but also religion, and also just culture in general. And 100 years from now, they'll probably be able to explain this period of time pretty well, but right now we're so in it that it's very overwhelming. So if I'm talking about you, I just want you to know you are not alone. There are several people all over who have the same story. And there are several people all over who are trying to kind of create little islands for people to jump ship off of the sinking ship of evangelicalism. And I try to be one of those islands for people. And hopefully, as time goes on, we can start to see, evangelicalism is not going to last. We're going to look back and think, man, that really sucked when Christians were doing the things that evangelicals are doing today. And I'm so glad that people were bold enough and passionate enough to leave for something better. So that's all I got to say in this video. You are not alone, and things are changing. Absolutely. If you want to check out my other videos, that would be great. Subscribe, all that stuff. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.